My parents let my sister's abusive boyfriend move in, so I left quietly, and they had no one when he robbed them blind. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I've always been the overlooked one in my family. If you grew up with narcissistic parents, you probably know the type, the kind who smile at neighbors, talk about family values, then tear you apart the moment the door closes. My parents, David and Carol, never hid who their favorite was. It was always Lily. My younger sister, 3 years younger, prettier, louder, and in their eyes, perfect. When I got my first job at 19, I handed half my paycheck to help with bills. When Lily turned 19, they bought her a car. They used to say, she's just finding herself whenever she quit another job or crashed another relationship. But when I came home tired from double shifts, my mom would sigh and say, "You really should be more like your sister. She's going places." I wanted to laugh. The only place she was going was back to her room to scroll on her phone while I fixed the leaky faucet my dad wouldn't touch. I tried not to resent her. I really did. I told myself it wasn't her fault that our parents built a pedestal and shoved her onto it. But over the years, that quiet bitterness grew roots. Every time I cooked dinner and they thanked Lily for helping, every time I cleaned the yard and they praised her for keeping the family together, something inside me hardened. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit on the porch with a beer and wonder what it would take for them to see me, not as the backup plan, not as the helper, but as their son. I kept hoping things would change, that one day I'd matter, but then Lily met someone, and the day she brought him home, I realized I hadn't even seen what worse looked like yet. Jason came into our lives on a Sunday afternoon, the kind of humid day where the air sticks to your skin and even silence feels heavy. Lily burst through the door with him like she was announcing royalty. "Everyone, this is Jason," she said, eyes glowing with that blind infatuation I'd seen before. Jason, tall, smug smile, expensive-looking watch that didn't match his wrinkled shirt, extended a hand to my dad first, not to me. He looked me over like he was sizing me up, then smirked. "So this is the brother?" His tone wasn't curious. It was condescending, like he already knew his place in this house was higher than mine. Dinner that night was unbearable. My parents fawned over him like he'd descended from the heavens. My mom giggled, actually giggled, when Jason talked about his business ventures. He tossed around words like investment and partnership, but never said what he actually did. When I asked, he gave this rehearsed laugh and said, "A bit of everything, man. You know how it is when you've got hustle." Lily looked at him like he'd just quoted Shakespeare. After dinner, I offered to help clean up, but Jason waved me off. "Nah, bro, I got it." He didn't move. My mom, meanwhile, told me to let our guest relax. It was like watching someone slowly replace me in real time. The praise, the charm, the way Jason called my dad sir, with just enough fake respect to make it sound sincere. That night, I heard laughter coming from the living room, Jason's deep chuckle mixed with my dad's booming one. My door was shut, but every sound cut through it. It felt like I was being erased, one joke at a time. I tried to tell myself he'd leave eventually, that Lily would move on like she always did. But as the days went on, Jason's presence grew roots, just like the resentment in my chest. And soon I realized he wasn't just visiting. He was settling in. It started small, Jason's toothbrush in the bathroom, his jacket draped over the couch, his shoes by the door. Within a week, he was everywhere. One morning, I woke up to find him sitting at the kitchen table, shirtless, eating my cereal and scrolling through my phone's charger like it was his. I blinked at him and he smirked. "You don't mind, right? Family shares." The word family came out of his mouth like a joke. By the end of that month, he'd officially moved in without ever asking. My parents didn't object. My mom even said, "It's nice having a real man around the house." That one cut deeper than I'd admit. I worked 10-hour shifts fixing HVAC systems, but apparently I wasn't a real man. Jason didn't work, not that I could tell. He spent his days on the couch claiming he was handling business calls. The only thing I heard was the sound of his video games and Lily's nervous laughter. At night, I'd hear them argue, muffled words through thin walls. Lily's voice would crack, pleading, followed by Jason's low growl, "You're useless without me." The next morning, she'd wear sunglasses indoors, saying she didn't sleep well. I confronted her once, gently. "Lily, is he hurting you?" She snapped instantly. Mind your own business. You've always been jealous. That line, word for word, came straight from our parents. One evening, I came home to find Jason in my chair, feet on my coffee table, beer in hand. My dad laughed beside him, calling him son. I stood there for a moment, watching the man who'd raised me bond with a stranger who treated me like dirt. That was the night I realized I was living in someone else's, and that my parents had already replaced me. Without even noticing, Jason didn't just move in, he took over. Within weeks, the house that once felt like mine became a stage for his performance. He'd walk around like a king, flipping through mail that wasn't his, eating food I'd bought, and making little digs whenever I entered a room. Must be nice having all this free time, he'd say when I came home exhausted from work. My mom would laugh and say, "Oh, don't tease him, Jason," but her tone wasn't defensive, it was affectionate, like she was proud of him for putting me down. It got worse when Jason started spreading lies. He told my parents that I'd been talking down to Lily, that I was jealous of their relationship, that I was toxic. One night at dinner, I tried to defend myself. "That's not true, My dad slammed his hand on the table. "Enough! You're always starting drama in this house." Jason leaned back, smirking, taking a slow sip of his beer like he'd already won. I began noticing subtle shifts. My mom stopped asking how my day was. My dad ignored me unless it was to complain. Even Lily started treating me like an enemy. I'd hear whispers from her room. "He's trying to make you look bad, babe. He's always been a leech." My name became poison in my own home. Every small thing turned into a fight. If a bill went unpaid, it was my fault. If food ran out, Jason would laugh and say, "Guess someone's freeloading again." And my parents would nod. It was like reality had been rewritten, and I was the villain. The worst part wasn't the insults. It was the silence. The quiet moments when I'd look at my family and realize they believed him. They believed him over their own son, and that was the night I started packing in my head, even if I hadn't yet touched a single bag. The night it all broke began like any other. Quiet, tense, the kind of silence that hums just before something snaps. I came home late from a service call, clothes covered in dust, hands raw from work. The lights were dim, but I heard shouting from Lily's room, Jason's voice loud and venomous, and Lily's sobs cutting through it like glass. My stomach dropped. I knocked once, hard. "Lily, you okay?" Her door flew open. Jason stood there, eyes bloodshot, jaw tight. "Mind your own damn business," he growled. I caught sight of Lily behind him, trembling, mascara streaked, a handprint blooming red on her arm. My chest burned. "You touch her again, I didn't even finish. Jason shoved me hard enough to send me into the wall. "Stop!" Lily screamed. "Just stop, both of you." She ran to Jason's side like I was the threat. My parents came running seconds later. My dad's first words weren't to check if I was okay. They were, "What did you do now?" Jason was calm, almost smug. He barged in, trying to start a fight. I laughed in this hollow, bitter sound I didn't even recognize. "You're defending him? After what he did?" My mom's voice was cold. "You need to leave, you're upsetting everyone." Something inside me just switched off. The rage drained, replaced by something colder. I looked at them, my parents, my sister, the man who'd just shoved me, and realized there was nothing left to fight for. No one here would ever see me. That night, I packed my clothes in silence. No big speech, no slammed doors, just the soft sound of zippers and the hum of betrayal thick in the air. As I walked out, my father muttered, "You're overreacting." Maybe I was, but for the first time in years, I didn't look back to find out. I left that night without a word. No dramatic goodbye, no angry speech, just quiet footsteps down the hall and the creak of the front door I'd fixed 100 times. The air outside felt sharp against my face, like the world itself was reminding me I was free, but not safe. I had nowhere lined up. Just my beat-up car, a few bags, and a month's savings. I drove until the streetlights faded and the roads blurred into darkness. For the first time in my life, I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't go back. I ended up in a rundown apartment on the edge of town. The kind that smelled like mildew and loneliness. My first night there, I lay on the floor, no bed yet, listening to the hum of an old refrigerator and the distant barking of stray dogs. It was pathetic, but it was mine. No shouting. No condescension. No Jason, just silence. The next few weeks were survival mode. I worked overtime, ate instant noodles, slept in my work clothes. My parents didn't call. The only message I got was a single text from my mother. "Don't come crawling back when you realize your mistake." I stared at it for a long time before deleting her number. Still, I couldn't stop worrying about Lily. Sometimes I'd drive past the old house at night, engine off, just to see if the lights were on. I wanted to believe she'd left him. I wanted to believe my absence might have forced them to see him for who he was. But deep down, I knew how this family worked. They'd keep pretending. They'd keep defending him. And sooner or later, that would cost them everything. It had been almost 4 months since I left when the knock came. I was half asleep on my couch, the TV flickering on some late-night rerun. The sound was soft at first, then desperate. Rapid, uneven knocks that made my stomach twist. When I opened the door, Lily was standing there. Her face was swollen, eyes red, a bruise stretching from her cheekbone down her neck. She looked nothing like the golden child my parents worshipped. She looked broken. "Please," she whispered, her voice shaking. I didn't know where else to go. For a moment, I froze. Part of me wanted to slam the door. Another part, the older brother who'd once patched her scraped knees and defended her from bullies, couldn't. I stepped aside. She walked in, clutching her bag like it held her last shred of safety. We sat in silence for a while. Finally, she said it. "He hit me again. But worse this time." Her hands trembled as she talked, about the screaming, the controlling, the threats. Jason had drained her savings and was now using my parents' money too. They think he's just borrowing. They don't see it. I felt something heavy and familiar tighten in my chest, that mix of rage and helplessness. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked. She looked up, tears in her eyes. "Because I believed them. I thought you were jealous just like they said." That sentence hit harder than I expected, but I swallowed it down. "You're safe here," I said quietly. "You're not going back." As she fell asleep on my couch that night, I sat awake, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet, too quiet. And all I could think about was how I'd been right all along. But something in me knew it wasn't over. Men like Jason don't just disappear quietly. 2 days after Lily showed up, my phone rang while I was at work. It was my mother. The first call from her since I'd left. Her voice was trembling, not angry, but terrified. "We've been robbed," she said. "Everything's gone." For a second, I thought I misheard her. "What do you mean gone?" I asked. She started crying. "The TV, the jewelry, your father's watch, even the safe. Someone broke in last night. My gut told me before my brain did. Jason." I asked the obvious question. "Where's Jason?" There was silence. Then, in a small, broken voice, "He's missing." Later that night, Lily and I drove to the house. The place looked hollow, drawers open, furniture overturned, their once prized home stripped bare. My father was pacing, muttering about calling the cops. My mom sat on the couch, shaking, clutching a photo frame like it could bring back what they'd lost. When she saw Lily, she froze. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew something was wrong." Lily didn't answer. She just started crying again. I wanted to say "I told you so," but the words died in my throat. There was no victory in watching your parents crumble under the weight of their own denial. The police came, asked questions, took fingerprints. When they asked about who lived there, my father hesitated before finally admitting, "Our daughter's boyfriend." "Jason." The officer's expression shifted immediately. "We'll need a photo." When they left, my father turned to me for the first time in months. "You think he did this?" he asked. His voice wasn't accusing this time. It was small, like a man asking for permission to believe what he already knew. I didn't have to answer. The empty walls said everything, but deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Because Jason wasn't just gone. He'd taken more than their money. He'd taken their pride. The call from the detective came 3 days later. I was at work when my phone buzzed, and the voice on the other end said, "Mr. Miller, we have an update regarding Jason Cole." My stomach turned. The detective explained that Jason had been picked up 2 towns over, caught pawning off jewelry that matched the items on my parents' stolen property list. "He's got priors," the detective added almost casually. "Fraud, assault, theft. Looks like he's been doing this for years." When I hung up, I just sat there staring at the wall. Years. The man my parents trusted. The man who called my dad sir and drank my beer. The man they chose over me. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was humiliation. That evening, Lily and I went back to the house. My mom looked hollow, her face pale and streaked with tears. My father sat in silence, his hands shaking as he held a cup of coffee he never drank. "The detective called," I said quietly. "They caught him. It was Jason," my mom's voice cracked. He stole everything. Even my mother's necklace." She looked at Lily, tears spilling over. "How could you bring him here?" Lily's sobs filled the room. "You think I knew? You think I wanted this?" For a moment, no one spoke. Just the sound of a family collapsing under the weight of their choices. Finally, my dad whispered, "We should have listened to you." His eyes met mine for the first time in what felt like years. There was guilt there, raw and heavy, but it didn't erase anything. "He fooled all of you," I said softly. "But I tried to warn you." My mother broke then, a choked, ugly sound that wasn't quite a cry, more like regret tearing its way out. Lily left the room shaking, and I just stood there, watching the people who once made me feel invisible finally see what they'd done. For the first time, I didn't feel angry, just empty. The house felt different after the truth came out. Colder, smaller, stripped of everything that once gave it warmth. Boxes of evidence sat in the living room, tags dangling from the few items the police had recovered. My parents didn't speak much anymore. My mother wandered the halls like a ghost, and my father just sat in his recliner, staring at the empty space where the TV used to be. The silence was almost painful. A week later, I stopped by after work to drop off some groceries. My mom tried to smile, but her eyes were red and tired. "You didn't have to do this," she murmured. "We'll manage." But the pantry was nearly bare, and the bills scattered across the counter said otherwise. I said nothing, just started unpacking. For the first time in my life, they didn't argue with me. Lily had moved in with a friend, trying to rebuild her life. I was proud of her, but watching our parents sink lower each day tore at something deep inside me. They'd lost their savings, their possessions, their pride, but worse, they'd lost their illusions. I overheard my dad on the phone one night, his voice cracking. "No, we can't afford the payments this month." "Yes, I understand." Then the sound of him hanging up and whispering, "God, what have I done?" It should have felt like justice, the universe finally balancing the scales. But standing there, looking at the wreckage of their choices, I didn't feel victorious. I felt numb, like all that anger I'd carried for years had nowhere left to go. A few nights later, I got a call from my mother again. Her voice trembled through the static. "Can you come home?" she said, "but please, we need you." I stared at the phone for a long time, because for the first time in my life, I had to decide if I wanted to save the people who never saved me. I went back the next morning. The house looked smaller than I remembered, stripped of everything except shame. My father sat at the table, head in his hands. My mother looked up when I walked in, eyes swollen, voice trembling. "We're so sorry," she whispered. "You were right about everything." Her words hung in the air like smoke, heavy, suffocating, too late. I stood there for a long time, taking it all in. The same kitchen where I'd been called lazy. The same walls that had echoed with laughter for Jason, not me. I could still see the faint outline on the wall where the family portrait used to hang, the one they'd taken without me because I wasn't home enough. "Why now?" I finally asked. My voice was calm, but it carried years of hurt. Why did it take losing everything to see me? My father lifted his head. His eyes were red, his voice small. "Because we were wrong. We believed him instead of you. We thought we were protecting the family." "The family?" I repeated, laughing bitterly. "You protected your illusion of it. You let that man walk all over me. You let him call me worthless while you stood there and watched." My mother reached for me, but I stepped back. "Do you know what it felt like?" I said quietly. "To be treated like a stranger in my own home? To be the villain in a story I didn't even start?" Neither of them answered. The silence between us was thick, not empty, but full of all the things we'd never said. Finally, I sighed. "You didn't lose everything because of Jason. You lost it because you refused to believe your own son." My father nodded slowly, tears welling up. My mother covered her face and began to cry, and for the first time, I didn't rush to comfort them. I just stood there feeling the power shift, not in revenge, but in clarity. They wanted their son back. But the version they broke wasn't coming home. I left their house that day without anger, just a strange, hollow calm. The kind that comes when you've already said everything there is to say. My parents called a few times after that, each message softer than the last. Apologies turned into small talk. Small talk turned into silence. I didn't block them. I just stopped answering. Some wounds don't need revenge. They just need distance. Lily stayed with me for a while, slowly finding her footing again. She got a job at a local daycare, started therapy, and began smiling in a way I hadn't seen since we were kids. Sometimes she'd apologize for everything, for believing their lies, for defending Jason. I'd tell her the same thing every time. We were all victims of the same story. Watching her heal was the only closure I needed. Months passed. Then one morning I saw Jason's mugshot on the news, arrested for another robbery 2 states over. My parents saw it too. My mom sent a single text. "You were right again." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. My apartment is small but peaceful, the kind of peace that hums quietly instead of hiding behind noise. Sometimes I sit by the window at night and think about how strange it feels, how walking away, the thing I once saw as defeat, turned out to be my victory. Because leaving wasn't weakness. It was survival. My parents still live in that hollow house, smaller now, emptier, quieter. I hear they rarely have visitors. Lily visits sometimes, I don't, not out of hate, but self-preservation. Some bridges burn for a reason. If you asked me what revenge looks like, I'd tell you this. It's waking up in peace while the people who doubted you live in the mess they made. That's the justice they'll carry, and the freedom I finally earned.